How do, everybody? Pardon me. So, I'm here in my folks' basement. As a lot of you guys know, I'm close with my parents. They are just about stepping into their 80s, and I try to spend a lot of time with them. They live close by. I do have my own place. I'm not there very often. I'm, as you guys know, often out of town, some random hotel. And once or twice a week, I'm over here. Just want to show you one thing real quick, and then we're going to get right to it. I made a Civil War map for my pop. Look at that. I made it. I made that. GoPro does horribly here, of course, but I'm pretty proud of it. It's not too bad. If I redid it now, it would probably be a little bit different. But anyways, so we're going to talk about economics here, guys. And I'm going to be talking about economics and the state of the economy quite a bit for the foreseeable future. I made one very gross error on the last video, guys, so hats off to those of you who watched it, but unfortunately I'm going to rehash a few things and kind of do a reshoot here. It'll, I'm sure, be a little bit different. What I want to say to begin with is there is one thing that all of us really need to be paying attention to first and foremost right now, and it has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with Trump. It has nothing to do with, not much to do with wedge issues, so on and so forth. It has very little to do with what most of you guys are seeing on the news and on YouTube. But it's the state of the economy, and it's the state of the economy because we are very closely approaching our breaking point. And this is going to be a breaking point unlike any other. Again, some reiterations. I've been studying a few different things for a lot longer than I've been studying the Civil War. As some of you know, one of those things is the history of our intelligence agencies, geopolitics, so on and so forth. And another thing I've been studying for quite a long time, there's the climate, it is economics. And again, to reiterate, I started following economics out of necessity and not because I wanted to. Okay, so I have a lib arts background. I don't have a business background in college, right? But when I started studying intelligence agencies, it didn't take me very long to understand that much of what our intelligence agencies do is support Wall Street. And a great example of that is back in 1953, there were a couple coups that the CIA instigated around the world. One was in Tehran when they disposed of the Shah. Of course, that had to do with propping up of the Saudi regime, right? And the booming oil market, right? As we were building all these highways and selling all these cars all of a sudden. Another fairly quiet coup that went down was in 1953 in Guatemala. Mind you, it was not a war and it was not a military invasion, but it was a quiet coup. We disposed of their democratically elected president, Jacobo Arbenz. We actually waged biowarfare and unleashed STDs in their nation, which President Obama and Hillary Clinton both apologized for around the year 2010. Okay, don't quote me, but it was around 2010 when they made a public apology for that. But anyways, the point being is that we waged a coup in Guatemala pretty much solely for the reason that Alan Dulles, the CIA director, had a pretty large stake in the company United Fruit. So for those of you who are younger, if you've ever heard of, the Banana Republic, the Banana Wars, and so on and so forth, that's where it gets its name for. We actually disposed of a democratically elected president, unleashed STDs in a foreign nation, all to prop up United Fruit. So and the more I looked into it, those who founded the CIA were by and large Ivy League folks. They weren't rough and tumble guys. A few had served in the military, but it was largely Ivy League folks supporting Wall Street through covert and illegal means. And that's still largely what they do today. But getting past that, guys, you really need to be watching the economy right now. And when I say the economy, I don't just mean the Dow Jones, okay? Little 101 here for you guys. The Dow Jones by no means is a good representation of the wealth of most of us Americans, okay? At different points, it's reflected, perhaps you could say, different segments. But right now, in 2025, when you see the Dow Jones still climbing and climbing, despite all the convulsions in the economy right now, many of which you guys are probably familiar, despite the fact that we can't stop borrowing, as our debt just soars to, levels that most economists are really shocked at. The Dow Jones continues to climb. The Dow Jones at this point in history right now, guys, only represents the top 10% of Americans. So when you see the Dow Jones doing well, do not think that America is doing well, because it's not. America is limping, it's wounded, and it's about to go right off a cliff. This video is not meant to be alarmist, okay? I am not a certified economist, trader, public accountant, okay? I want to make that clear. And I'm not here to give anybody financial advice, but what I am here to say is that the reckoning, and this is a reckoning of all reckonings, okay, is coming. I talked in the video that I botched up a little bit about the road to here. And in roundabout ways, if you go through my videos and you pay attention, I have talked a bit about the founding of the Federal Reserve. I've made whispers about the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, so on and so forth, JP Morgan. But, a good way to start understanding about this stuff is by, learning about all the crashes, all the depressions, right? There was a series of almost 10 banking panics before the turn of the 20th century. Those banking panics by JP Morgan, who was hailed to be a hero, and he brought all the bankers together and made them agree to, blah, 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 blah. That's myth. That's legend. Morgan instituted almost 10 banking panics before the turn of the century to usher in the Federal Reserve. First and foremost, end of story, okay? Of course, everybody's familiar with the Great Depression. There have been lots of shocks to the system, over the decades. One that I want folks to kind of maybe learn about more and study is not 2002, 2007, 2008, but what led up to 2007, 2008. And that was the deregulation that happened under Clinton in 2000. One of the very last things he did in office, under the direction of Alan Greenspan, the Fed chair, and Larry Summers, one of those backdoor operators, was that he not only gave the banks very, very wide latitude as far as investing and making risky moves, right, that led to the derivatives crash of 2007, 2008, but he undid banking regulations that were in place since 1935 under something called the Glass-Steagall Act. So long story short here is that what we're experiencing now is a broad culmination of many events in the very long-term plan. When you really start to understand who rules this world, there's one thing that you'll eventually learn, and that is that they are very patient. They have plans, and they are very painstaking and patient about their plans. But what we're experiencing now is not just the fault of Trump. It's not just the fault of tariffs. It's not just the fault of Silicon Valley. All those are going to be giving in the coming years as to how this happened. But what I want to instill is that this has been a long chain of events, which, if not before, really picked up in the year 2000. And ever since then, this has been a wounded system headed for collapse. And again, I don't mean to be alarmist, but I've already made a second video on this, and I'll probably make a third, but I want everybody to stop paying attention to what the news wants you to pay attention to. I want you to discard your YouTube feed and concentrate right now on the markets, on housing, on the indexes, so on and so forth, you know, all the canaries in the coal mines, because the edge of the cliff is drawing pretty near. I'm not going to say exactly when. I don't have a crystal ball, but everybody needs to be concerned about this, guys. This is very, very important. The reckoning has come. With that, guys, I'll pick up on video 2 and probably make a third one here. So I'll see you later.